Okay, the current prototyping technologies and crowdfunding channels have resurged the hardware sector in the past few years. However, not all Kickstarter projects turn into real products. So really, how hard is hardware? We are going for our next panel, and I'm inviting on stage Luka Sucic, Business Development and Investment Manager at raum, Ze Pinto Ferreira, co-founder and CEO of FNV Labs, and Andrei Pitis, co-founder and CTO, yes, at VectorWatch. I know him as an angel investor. I don't know this title yet.
Now I work.
And also, our esteemed how-to-web editor, Vali Birzoi.
Thank you. Hello, guys. Hello. Nice to see you. You're still here at this late hour. And I'll invite some of you who are already sipping their goodbye wine to come back inside, because this will be an exciting talk. I am Vali, as our MC told you. I'm the editor of the How to Web blog. And I have here with me 3 panelists that I'm going to ask to shortly introduce themselves and tell us why are we here talking about hardware, why hardware is cool again, and more than that, why is it back in business?
So I'll start with the question right away. So,
okay.
I mean, hardware never went out of the business. It's just, you know, hype is really high now because of the crowdfunding, because of a lot of movements that happened in the last couple of years, rapid prototyping from Arduinos, BeagleBoards, and everything else. The hardness of doing hardware prototyping is much lower, from 3D printing to everything else. So basically, the new revolution is basically just a follow-up of everything that happened before in the last couple of 10 decades, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, but is it just a hype, or is it a
No.
long trend?
No, so definitely a long trend, because at this point, before hardware took a lot of R&D, took a lot of effort and a lot of expertise right now, and in order to build prototypes before, you need to have specialized labs. People had you know, a lot of experience and a lot of on-hand knowledge. At this point, you have a lot of free knowledge out there. You have a lot of things coming from all parts of the world, not only I don't know, high engineering countries. So definitely it's here to stay. It never went away. It is hype to a certain extent, but at this point the barrier of entrance is much lower than anything happening in the last couple of years because of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrei?
Yes, I think it is about the barriers that have been lifted recently, and I think that also having these barriers lifted, the ability of being able to actually produce a physical product is quite exciting. And you know, working, I mean, you go to the normal printer, you get a print, it doesn't mean anything to you. But when you go to the 3D printer and you get, you know, like a case for a product that you just built, and you put the electronics in it, and you put it on your hand, that's really amazing. I mean, it's really something that you want to do.
All right, hi guys. So I'm Ze. I'm founder of Mello, or FNV Labs, which we're incorporated under. We launched a few months ago, made about $100,000 in the first 4 days or so, are now up to a healthy multiple of that, and just finishing up raising a round in the US. So that gives you a bit of context. And we actually do a cooking product, a thing that sits in your countertop and cooks you dinner while you're at work, which means we deal with a few requirements that mean we can't use a lot of the fast prototyping technologies that people use nowadays. And the one thing I will comment on that is that early stage prototyping is a lot easier than it was even 2 years ago. But at a certain point, you're still going to have to use very hard, very expensive techniques to get finer resolution. So it's still quite hard. It's a lot easier. But boy, if you guys think we have it easy, prototype in China for a little while and see how Chinese startups do it. Yeah. They can get unbelievable quality at prices and speeds we'll never get. And that's fantastic to see.
All right. Okay, prototyping is easier, but to build a hardware business, prototype is not everything. How about production and distribution? Should I jump to China directly or try to produce something locally? 3D printing something locally?
I can jump in here. Long time ago, I used to work for a company that's done a lot of production in China in industrial electronics, and that's true. You know, they are getting much better and much. I would say that the most aggressive industry in the world is now hardware in China. They can copy and reverse engineer anything at, you know, given a certain amount of speed. But there are still things that are. I wouldn't say it's hard, it's just basically the business as usual, distribution, production, you know, PCBs and everything else. This is the way it was all the way before. But what's happening right now is I think that part is coming to be disrupted at a certain point. Rapid prototyping, early stage prototyping is you know, much lower and much easier. And now it's time to move on to something else. I believe that China cannot dominate forever there. They are aggressive and they are really, really good, but we're seeing a lot of movements, for example, in Poland. You have, in any country from Eastern Bloc, I would say, that had sort of a engineering, I don't know how to call it, tradition. There is still a lot of knowledge and a lot of power. For example, just to give you an example, there is a guy 24 years old in Croatia. You know about that story? So 24 years old, he built a Tesla competitor out of Croatia, which is, you know, like quarter of, how big is Romania? 20 million? So 4.5 million people, 24, but he used a lot of people that worked for arms industry, for, you know, manufacturing industry that just went dead. And basically, if you can happen from there, from Croatia, which, you know, everything that lives and breathes in bureaucracy wants to kill you, it can happen anywhere. Yeah.
Yes, so going from prototyping to production is a really hard thing to do. If you go the China route, you have to get some local help, so to have people that are native and that can help you, you know, go through the weeds. Even with that, it's going to be a really tough prospect. And you know, the copying is done at a very high level, so they have designs for everything that you want to do. So if you want to go there and, you know, build a smartwatch and maybe you have a design for it, and they'll say, no, take our smart, it's better. You can, you know, you just put your brand on it and it works. We give you hardware, software, and everything. So for that, it's quite an easy route because they have everything, the tooling and everything for that, for their smartwatch or for their phone or for their device, and they can white label it very easily. But if you want to go the extra mile and really, you know, build your technology with them, it's going to be fairly complicated. And sometimes they will not, sometimes they will not, they may not want to do that because their business is, I mean, you know, yeah, they will get to the next customer that wants just another tablet, you know, and puts another brand name on it, but it's still the same tablet underneath. So
yeah, okay. Let's tell the audience that you are an angel investor and you are the president of the Romanian software, but you are here. You are here as a co-founder of VectorWatch, which is a smartwatch designed locally, and is it produced locally?
It is not produced locally.
But it's designed.
It is designed here. Actually, my co-founders are here in this room, one of them, and the other one is probably also close. It's going to be produced in China, and we've went through all these pains that I'm speaking from experience and not from the books.
Okay.
And it's especially hard to produce something out of anything other than plastic. I mean, something out of steel. If you want to build something out of steel, it's much more complicated than building it from plastic.
You know,
how is with the sous vide thing?
Sorry, can you repeat?
How is with your Wonder robot, kitchen robot?
Well, it's very nice actually. I looked at.
Oh, thanks. I'm a big fan of your product too. I had no idea you were behind it before this actually. So yeah, we're actually just evaluating contract manufacturers now, and for a long time we're fixated on going to China as soon as possible. And we're now coming to the conclusion that producing a couple of batches in the US first, especially, might not be a bad idea. China is it's a great place to produce anything. It's not the cheapest anymore. It's by far the most skilled though. You'll find engineers in China who have been doing, say, tooling for plastic products for 30 years every single day. And that's just not found anywhere else. But they're also very, very aggressive. They're very good at what they do, and they expect you to be very good at what you do too. So there's no slack for errors. And if you're innocent, you will get fleeced. So we're kind of evaluating going mainly for quality issues to US first, pay the bill, which will be enormously bigger, but make sure that we don't provide our customers with inferior product. It's sort of a risk mitigation issue for us.
So I have a question. Who here in this room is contemplating making a hardware product?
Yeah, it was going to be my...
Okay,
who is in hardware business right now from the audience? Anyone in hardware business? One, just one. Oh my God.
Congratulations.
Who's contemplating to get into hardware business? All right. Good. So we understood that financing, building hardware is a lot easier. But how about financing, right? Is it still hard to finance? Is it more expensive than software development?
Oh, definitely, yes. I mean, the thing is that software is so much easier. It's, you can get returns much faster. But on the other hand, building hardware is something that you get the greatest margins on if you know what you're doing. Yeah. And it's also the stickiness level. So from an investor's perspective, we have two hardware startups in our portfolio, which have much higher burn rates than anything we've seen before, which is completely normal because you have also the software part, the hardware part, the industrial design, all sorts of things. So definitely, I mean, at this point you have a lot of specialized programs. You have Accelerate in Shenzhen. You have a couple of here coming from Ukraine, a couple of in Europe. One in Amsterdam, so people are starting to recognize, that there is a big need for financing at that point. I think a lot of investors are still a little bit afraid because, I mean, it's much easier to restart or pivot on a software product than on hardware, especially if you have, especially if you reach a certain point, then you say.
The residual value of a hardware company is bigger because if you build the technology, you can at least sell the technology. So you're building some, and in hardware, if you sell 100,000 units, you make some money. Whereas in software, if you you download 100,000 apps, you may make nothing. I mean, it's the traction. When you see the traction in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, that's.
No, that's a great point. And one thing, I'm going to pitch hardware to you guys for just a second. The best thing about hardware right now is that if you tweak your cash flow model, and hardware is all about the cash flow. Can you get cash in before you spend it? If you tweak it right, you might never have to find investment. Because we charge our customers almost immediately, and in our case, we charge them $400 per unit. If you get enough of those in to pay for your development costs, you're in business. So in our case, we've done about 2.5 years of development, essentially bootstrapped. We're now raising around to pay for a little bit further development. But after that, if everything goes well, a big seed will be entirely optional. And you can see cases like, say, Tile, which are my heroes right now. Yep. They sold a ton of product. They did it on $200,000 out of Silicon Valley, which is honestly for Silicon Valley employees nothing. And they're now raising, if I'm not mistaken, or have raised something like 10 to 15 million because they want to. They're revenue positive from an initial investment of $200,000, and they are now up to double-digit million in revenue in about a year. So that's the sort of thing that you can do with hardware that is very, very hard to replicate with software. When it goes well, it can go tremendously well.
The thing is, I wouldn't say it's really hard, but it's tricky to get the product market fit. If you don't get it right, then you are dead in the water. So even with technology, IP, whatever you have, that's what I meant with the pivoting thing. With software, you say, we spend like 3 months building the code base. Yeah, let's scratch it and build something else. I mean, that's so much easier. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, how hard is hardware? Some hardware comes also with a lot of software, so it's both worlds combined. And when you combine hardware releases with software releases, then that's when the hell breaks loose.
All right, but on the other hand, in hardware business, you deal with margins that are decreasing, constantly decreasing.
In hardware?
And yeah, in software, you're kind of assured you're living from intellectual property and so on, but in hardware, you're actually,
I debate that personally.
or at least that's the perception, you know?
I would seriously debate that.
Yeah.
In our case, we're pushing up price so we're trying to avoid commoditization at all costs. And one of our biggest pushes right now is that this price right now, $400, is the cheapest you're ever going to be able to find our product for. Our product is going to raise up to $500 or so in a few months. And after that, we might even double or treble the price. And as far as the cost of actually building it, that's only going to decrease with units. We get tremendous skill advantages. So we're assuming that we get a very small margin right now, just enough to pay for a unit cost, the cost of acquisition. But going forwards, well, I'm ex-Procter & Gamble, so I'm expecting a 95% margin, and that's what I'm going to shoot for.
All right.
Just to add one more thing on top of it, I mean, when you build hardware, you also have opportunity to accessorize. So you have a lot of add-ons. You have a lot of things that you can cross-sell, upsell. In kitchen robots, you can, I don't know, you can do a lot of things. And in most of the things, even with the smartwatches, I love smartwatches, and I love your product too. But you can have from rings to cases to any kind of type of things that you want on software, on hardware side. So basically, you have a maneuvering space with software. It is also there, the possibility, but it's much more sweeter, I would say.
All right. So, but product cycle for the hardware is definitely longer than software. And all right, we've seen that some investors are already looking into hardware business. How about accelerators, Luka? How they are dealing with the longer product cycle of hardware? Because is this 3 or 6 months enough to be accelerated in hardware business?
I mean, definitely not to a point that software startup would be in 3 to 6 months, but basically that's accounted for at a certain point when the time of the investment. You know how much time do you need to build something, and you cannot short it. I mean, if you short it, you build it. So it's basically all about understanding what kind of business are you in, or what are you trying to build. So I don't see that as a problem. I mean, we analyzed around 200, in the last year, around 200 hardware startups so far. We invested only in 2, which is around the average of the industry. But there is so much things going on right now, so much, I would say, copycats. Probably you guys have, or you will have, if you become successful.
Yeah, we've had a few problems with that. Legal action to be pursued later.
Yeah, so this is the thing that at a certain point people perceive it, oh, I can do that. I can, put something on Kickstarter or, I don't know, Indiegogo or somewhere and, give it a shot. I'll have a prototype. But basically the cycle of it, it's like a cookbook. You know what you need to do to reach the prototype stage. I don't know, first 500, 150 batches, somewhere locally, and then ship it to China, and then do all sorts of things. So there are specialized, people who are dealing with that for a long period of time. So it's not so problematic as it sounds to programs like accelerators, incubators.
Guys, I'll add a bit of, I guess, perspective from someone who's raising around now, and we've actually had some conversations with some top accelerators in the US about ditching the round and just going with them. And the perspective over there was pretty simple. It doesn't really matter that we are hardware. It doesn't really matter if we're on time to ship or are going to ship during the accelerator. Can we move, the things we focused on were, can we move the needle in a significant way? Can we find a key metric that will move in a significant way while we're in the program so we can then move exponentially afterwards? And that's not necessarily doing engineering, which is something that has actually been clouding my perspective a little bit. I'm an engineer, a mechanical one. And so when I think of moving the company forward, I think of moving product forward. And that becoming a CEO now, that's not necessarily true, which has been kind of being a puzzle for me. So if you're considering an accelerator, even if you're not a hardware business, think of what key metric, what key objective can I fulfill during this period? How will I move the needle to get to the next stage? And that's not necessarily building product.
Maybe a little bit, that's really an interesting point. But can you maybe give a little bit examples about the metrics? I mean, people are still thinking about, can I build a bit more prettier product or?
Sure. So I can't disclose the actual accelerators and incubators we talk to. On metrics, it's pretty simple for hardware. If you're not shipping, can you sell? If you're shipping, can you ship more? So in our case, it's can we spend say 3 or 4 months doing intensive marketing and get to product market fit, which in hardware is extremely easy to define. Very hard to reach, but extremely easy to define. It's simply, can you find a repeatable, scalable channel to get users from at a sustainable margin? So is the cost of selling plus the cost of a unit smaller than the price you charge? If so, you're in business, you have something that can just grow exponentially. You can just get that customer in and use him to pay for another one. So that's pretty simple for us. So the question was always, can we in 3 months get to a few million in revenue?
And can you?
I'm going to say yes. It's the only thing I can say on a stage, right?
Andrei, how about smartwatches? It's kind of crowded market.
Yes.
How do you differentiate yourself in hardware, actually?
How do
Is the design the main thing, the functionality?
When you speak about watch, it's a product that's very personal. I mean, you have it on you every single day, and you interact with it directly. So differentiation doesn't come just in a list of things. It comes also by touching it, by wearing it, and it's not a science. It's an art, and it's very complicated. So that's why we have right now in the team a lot of the people from an international team that has been in the watch industry for years. And we're trying to build a product that's watch first and smart somehow second. So it blends it into people's lives without necessarily being very obtrusive. But that's just one angle on how we differentiate. And the whole story you'll be able to tell once you take that product in your hand, and you'll see.
Okay. Since you've mentioned the 3D printing, and somebody said earlier that 3D printing will revolutionize the hardware. How do you think that, is this going to happen? How do you think that 3D printing will influence the hardware development?
I mean, if you look very far in the future, it might. Right now, it's, a hit and miss thing. I mean, sometimes you struggle with printers that don't have the resolution. You want to print a mock-up that doesn't, especially when you work with very tiny pieces, and sometimes, right now it's a hit and miss, so that's why maybe I have a narrow vision, but, if I get away from this, from my experiences, and I look in the future, I guess it will, yes.
Ze?
Yeah, personally, to a certain extent, it's already here and the future on the commercial side. Personally, as a consumer thing, I don't think it scales very well. It's not. I've never seen a use case or sort of an imagined future that's actually interesting to me. It makes a lot of sense though in the industry. So, for instance, if you're building a bridge, you can 3D print in metal some fantastic. And I'm being a mechanical engineer here. I'm sorry for that. You can build some fantastic components you could never build any other way. So that's for structural applications, for space applications. Tremendous, world-changing, game-changing, everything. To 3D print a dish so you can have it for dinner, I don't know.
Maybe a couple of examples. So I love 3D printing. You can see one just outside, play with it a little bit. It's actually from Poland. We're based in Poland, just across the street. So at this point, people were using 3D printing for a long time. Again, the patents run out. The whole story is out there using it commercially, but it's really, really early stage. It's still in infancy. But I've started seeing a really cool, innovative business models that might change your mind. So you're building a household appliance, right? What happens when something breaks and you need a spare part?
Well, we usually use
actually,
Subaru,
our coffee espresso,
Yeah.
we lost something from the coffee espresso, and we 3D printed the piece. So,
Okay.
There is, we're having a next batch in December. There's a startup called Sartec from Israel and France. Basically, they're trying to build a peer-to-peer 3D printed spare parts service. So you break, what's the name of it?
Mellow. Yeah.
Mellow. So you break something on Mellow, a handle or bar, you can order it from you. but you know how long it takes to ship. So, or you can order it from your post office or your telecom office. Can you print it? It will cost a little bit more, but it's functional until the real one starts.
Oh, of course, I'm waiting to be surprised.
Okay, so that's one of the use cases. Just hopefully we're going to see that much more. In terms of manufacturing, I mean, 3D printing has been here for a while. Only it was much more expensive.
Okay, guys, we should pick up some questions from audience. There's one there, Dragos.
Hi, I'm Dragos. How hard is to apply lean principles in hardware startups, and is it worth to apply lean principle in hardware startups? Do you need to have a budget for this?
I'll take this one for now. Well, to a point, the word lean started in manufacturing, right? So that's kind of a given. It's fairly easy in upstream development. And you kind of, if you're a startup and you haven't raised a significant round, you have to be lean, period. Or you're not going to make it past month 2 when you start prototyping and CNCing things. Personally, we don't really use lean methodology as defined by Eric Ries. We end up using a lot of the same ideas, but we're hard-headed, so we don't really like to use the words. But yeah, I guess it's fairly easy to iterate. It's a lot slower than software if you insist on building the whole system at a time. But say, if you're disciplined and you only iterate on the things that you're testing or concentrated at that particular time, so in our case, say the volume that our plants can cook at a time, if we only iterate on that particular portion, we can iterate multiple times a day. So we can test features and to a point do a very janky version of A/B testing and lean methodologies fairly quickly if we just do one small piece at a time. And that really helps. So it's possible. It's not exactly the same as in software. It requires a lot more planning, but you can definitely do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, my experience is that it's much harder in hardware than in software. So having been in both worlds, I think it's, at the beginning, it's pretty frustrating to see that you cannot really iterate. I mean, you could, but if you plan ahead, so that requires a certain discipline, you know, and in startups, usually discipline is something that is yet to be found.
Yeah, you know, at a certain point, you just have to get really serious. That's the problem. So if you have metal parts, say, and you want to test fit and finish, and you have something that is a luxury item on a wrist, you're going to have to CNC the crap out of everything, and it'll take 2 weeks to get prototypes back, and at a certain point, that's just irreducible complexity. At that point, it's just, you try to be lean, but it's going to be hard.
Right. Other questions? Yeah, over there. One over there, in the middle.
Hi, so I'm curious, since you're going to be producing this in China, and they have a big reputation for being very flexible with IP, how big a concern is that your design is going to become one of their design library that then they offer to other people in the future?
It's not a concern, it's a it's certain. You don't have to concern with these things, it will become. Now the question is, what can they do with it? I mean, if you have a unique software that only you have and they can at most, let's say, copy, but they cannot really, you know, have the source code and replicate, then it's less of a concern that they have the hardware, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Same deal for us, kind of. So we look at a lot of our value add being in software. So like a previous speaker said, the service layer adds a lot that is very, very hard to replicate. And on the other hand, you know, we have a couple of patents that really protect us. So in China, IP is flexible, and we can be copied. But if someone tries to export the exact same device to, say, Romania or the US, they'll be blocked at the border. We can enforce our IP in the markets where we sell, even though we might not be able to enforce them in the market where we manufacture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, should we conclude that in hardware, the most important thing is software?
It depends on the hardware product. It really depends on that. I mean, I would say that the things that are unique to your startup, I mean, the intellectual property that you have, you need to be able to protect it. In software, it's a little bit easier, I think, than in hardware.
Yeah, I guess you're very right. Personally, in our company, even though the founding team is mostly hardware-centric, we don't make the distinction. We don't, even though I'm here on a hardware panel, we don't think of ourselves as hardware entrepreneurs or a hardware company. We're an everywhere company. We make hardware and software that blend seamlessly together and multiply the value of each. We divert focus and find advantages wherever possible, and we mitigate the bad parts of software, which for us are you're not able to charge for it with hardware, and we mitigate the bad parts of hardware, being commoditization, through software. And that really, I guess, gives the best of both worlds.
Anyway, the Chinese, so I want to clarify something. The Chinese are not really just stealing or just copying. They are improving those designs. They are learning. So the thing that the Chinese do is that they are learning. It's very interesting. I thought that they are just copying, but they are learning, and they are making a slightly improved version that they will white label as being better than the brand name that they are producing.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight.